Hey guys, it's Blue, and I'm here to finally show you guys our deck list for Aigami. So Aigami was, of course, the antagonist in the new Yu-Gi-Oh movie. So we tried to replicate his deck pretty faithfully. Although it's not, too difficult because, of course, all these new cards were featured in the movie, and all of them came out in the movie pack. So his deck is exclusively based on a new archetype called Cubics. If you're not already aware, I'm sure most of you guys watching this have seen the movie or you've seen the pack. You know what these Cubics are. If you haven't really looked into them yet, like you kind of saw them but you're not sure what they all do, don't worry, because I'm going to go through them and what they do, because they're very interesting archetype level, a lot of features. So if you already know what they do, you might as well skim through the video at like 1.5 speed. But if not, I'll try to break down for you guys what they do, because they do have a lot of effects. These decks are a lot more geared towards a competitive aspect, so they're very different from what we have currently in our lineup of character decks. So, and yeah, the whole archetype, every card, is called Cubic, which I'm also so tired of hearing from my material science course, with everything has just been cubic structures and cubic this, cubic that. So I'm kind of at this point like maxed out on the word cubic, but I'm going to go through this cubic deck and see what these cubic cards do. So I will start off with what is the main foundation of this deck. So this card is the basis for so many cards' effects, and what essentially is, again, the starting point for the entire deck to be built off of. And that monster is Behemoth, the Cubic Seed. So, coming in with 0 attack, 0 defense, like almost every Cubic, he cannot be destroyed by battle. And if he's involved in the battle, you can send him to your spell and trap card zone as a continuous spell card, so like Crystal Beasts. And you can place 1 cubic counter on an opponent's monster. And again, if you're not sure what these cards do yet, that's the big thing right there, is those 2 words, cubic counter. Alright, so that's the big thing right there. This archetype introduces a new kind of counter called cubic counters. Appropriately so, right? Cubics. And these counters are very powerful, because what they do is when a monster is given a cubic counter, it cannot attack, and all of its effects are negated. Behemoth is the only monster which dishes out cubic counters. Otherwise, it's the spells and traps which are the ones giving out cubic counters. But the cubic counters are really powerful, because obviously they start to like hinder and immobilize your opponent while you're over here summoning stronger monsters. So, and then during your main phase, if Behemoth is in your spell and trap zone, you can special summon him. So that's pretty much what he does. You cannot be destroyed by battle, and you can send him to the spell trap card zone to put a counter on your opponent, and then put him back into a monster card zone during your following main phase. And that's just the foundation. That's what he does, because most of the way that his deck works is without even using his effect, but just using him. So I'm going to go to the next card, and the way I try to break down the cubics is that monsters fall into one of 2 large categories. They're either a standalone monster, like Behemoth, because even though other cards play off of him, he doesn't play into any other specific cards by name. So either standalone monsters, or monsters that are part of what I'll refer to as a family. And within the family, there are monsters that belong to a tier or a stage. So this deck has, I'll go through all this, don't worry, but this deck has 2 families. Each family is paralleled with 3 tiers or 3 stages. So the first one up is Gargoyle, I'm not really sure how to pronounce that, but Gargoyle, the Cubic King. So this is going to be for family 1. He starts at the bottom. To special summon him, like almost all cubics, you need to send 1 cubic from your field to the grave. When he special summoned from the hand via any means, he inflicts 800 damage to your opponent. He gains 800 attack when summoned by sending a cubic monster. And then when he's involved in a battle, so presumably when he's not destroyed by an opponent's monster, when he's involved in a battle, you can send him to the graveyard to special summon 2 Vigems, the cubic seed, from your graveyard, and then search out 1 Vulcan Dragony, the cubic king. So the way this works out, again, if you've watched our duels, you see how this plays out. But you need to send a cubic to the graveyard from your field to summon him. When if he attacks the monster and destroys, or even if it's not destroyed, if he attacks the monster, he doesn't lose. You can send him to the graveyard, special summon up 2 Vigem the cubic seed, and then search out the next cubic in this family. So he specifically searches this 1 cubic. So that was Vulcan Dragony, the cubic king. And this is what is like the second stage of this family. So Vulcan Dragony needs to have 2 cubics on the field to be sent to the graveyard to special summon him, which is what the last one sets you up for. Gargoyle puts 2 cubic seeds in the field, which you can then send immediately to special summon him. And then when he's special summoned, he inflicts 800 points of damage, just like Gargoyle. And when he's summoned, he gains 1600 attack. So we're seeing the trend right here in this family is 800 attack per cubic required to summon. And then same thing that once, if he's involved in the battle this turn, you can send him to the graveyard to special summon 3 Vigem, the cubic seed, and search 1 Indiora Doomvault, the cubic emperor. So again, it's that same mechanic. You have to send X number of cubics, inflict damage. You get an attack based on the number of cubics that need to be sent, and this family is multiples of 800 per cubic. And then when he's involved in the battle, you can attribute him to special summon Vijam, and then search out a bigger one. And again, like I said, that is Indiora Doomvault, the cubic emperor. So the way he is of course 3 cubic monsters. He inflicts 800 damage, and he has 2400 attack when summoned by the cubic effect. The other cubics can be special summoned by other ways, but if they do not get their attack effect. They get the other effects, but they do not have any attack points. He can only be special summoned by this cubic summon. He gains 2400 attack, he inflicts 800 points of damage, and because since he's the stage 3 of this family, there's nowhere for him to go, no one for him to search, there's no more Vijams to take. When he is in your possession and sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect or card, so destroyed by battle, destroyed by spell trap, monster effect, whatever, you can special summon 3 cubic monsters from your graveyard, and you can add any cubic card from your deck or graveyard to your hand. So if you can get him out, 2400 attack is not a tremendous amount. It's good, but not like the most we've seen so far. But the thing is that, again, he can summon any 3 cubics, and like I had just said, the other cubics can be special summoned by other ways, but they must first be special summoned, the proper way. So basically, to get to him, you likely have, Vijams in the graveyard, and you have Gargoyle, and you have Vulcan Dragony. If you had been summoning them all the way through. And because these 2 would have been summoned properly, you can summon them back with the effect of Indiora. Or you can summon up Vijams. Again, the other ones won't inflict damage because they weren't summoned from the hand, but they wouldn't have any attack points because they weren't summoned from the hand via the cubic summon effect. But the whole purpose of all this is to recycle cubics. You can take back any 3 cubics if they are either the jams or if they were special summoned the proper way the first time. So you couldn't take another one of him back. But you can search any cubic card. Any card at all in this deck you can search from your deck or take it back from your graveyard and resummon it. So even when you lose him, he really sets you back up. And the whole bringing back cubics thing via his effect, as well as his parallel in the second family, is very important for a spell card that's to come later in the deck. So moving on to, again, these are the terms I'm using, families and stages, as how I'm trying to break down, how I try to describe the way these things work. So the second family starts off with Dark Garnix, the Cubic Beast. And this second family is almost identical to, but a little bit different than the first one. So these all gain 1,000 attack per cubic need. So this is obviously, again, the base one. You need 1 cubic sent to the graveyard from your field to summon him. He gains 1,000 attack. So there's no damage effect. And this family gets to attack an equal number of times to the to where they are, as far as again what I call a stage. So it's number of cubics that were sent to the graveyard. He's stage 1, so he gets 1 attack, 1,000 attack, and he has to destroy a monster by battle. He can't be involved by, so he actually have to destroy something. But it's the same thing. Send to the graveyard, special summon 2 the jams, and then search out the next piece, which is Blade Garudia, the Cubic Beast. And so, same thing. I'm going to go through this a little bit faster now, because I hope you guys, if you're learning cubics now, or if you're unfamiliar with them and you're trying to get more, reinforcement on how they work, so 2,000 attack, so against 1,000 per number of cubics required to summon. He can attack twice in the same battle phase. And when he destroys a monster and sends it to the graveyard, you can attribute him to special summon 3 the jams, up to 3, from your graveyard to your field, and then search out what's one of my favorite cubics, actually. Buster Gundiel, the Cubic Behemoth. You've noticed that the names too, it goes, the first family went Cubic King, Cubic Emperor, kind of like topping over King, in a sense. And then this one went Beast, Behemoth. So you even see too, like the names also reflect where they go to. So, same thing as his previous family members. So it needs 3 cubics to be set from the field to the graveyard to summon him. He gains 1,000 attack per each, so it's 3,000. Now again, the effects are written that it's a set 3,000. It does not say 1,000 per each. That's how I'm just describing it. The effect is a bulk 3,000, which is I'm only mentioning because of any card effects that would play off that specific wording. But that's really a real technical thing. So it's 3,000 attack. You can make a second and third attack per battle phase, and just like in Diora, when he in your possession is sent from the field to the graveyard by an opponent's card, so by battle or by card effect, you can special summon 3 cubics from your graveyard and search a cubic card from your deck or graveyard and add it to your hand. And again, like in Doria, he cannot be special summoned except by a cubic summon, but he can summon back any of his prior family members if they have been summoned properly, because again, it's the first stage and 2 stage in both of them that have the wording must first be special summoned from your hand by signing 2 cubics. So, but that's how most of these work. Again, it's broken up mostly into 2 families. Go stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and the effects are very parallel. You'll see the biggest difference is one family gets 800 attack per monster needed and gets 800 damage when it's summoned. The other ones have 1,000 attack per monster needed, but can attack multiple times based on their again where they are in which stage they are. Again, stage quotes, one of my words. It's not a real term that's being used. But those effects happen regardless, though. So the 800 damage happens regardless if it was cubic summoned. The multiple attacks are regardless if it was cubic summoned, but they don't get attack points unless they're cubic summoned. or unless there's a spell card in your deck which does that, which of course there is. But before we get to there, so the rest of the deck consists of 3 of Crimson Nova, the Dark Cubic Lord. So he has his own unique summon thing. You cannot be normal summon. You must first special summon him from your hand by revealing 3 cubic cards of different names. And this deck, that is really not hard to do because every card says cubic in it. There's no miscellaneous cards. Every single card in the archetype says a cubic. So any kind of card, monster, spell, trap, works. Show your opponent 3 different ones. Special summon him. He has 3,000 attack. He's unaffected by monsters' effects who have an attack equal to or less than him. If he destroys the monster by battle, he can make a second attack during the battle phase. His last effect states that during your end phase, both players take 3,000 points of damage, and that effect can only be used once per turn. But that's kind of a hell of an effect right there, that all you can do, and I actually did it in one duel, is you summon him, you can end, and it's automatic 3,000 damage unless your opponent has a card to stop it. And in some cases that very well could be just enough to win the duel. Again, especially when you have cubic pieces which do 800 damage when summoned from the hand. So that's their, boss year 1. He's one of 2 that has attack points printed on the card. So regardless of how he's summoned. And this is also the one that makes up the big boss fusion, which of course will come at the end of the actual main deck. So last monster, the only monster featured in 2, because it really wasn't seem like it was played in the movie at all. What we found was it was just thrown into the pack. There were cards in this pack that were not from the movie itself, but they support the cards introduced in the movie. So here is Duza, the Meteor Cubic Vessel. So he's a standalone. He, like Vijim, can be normal summoned. And when he's summoned, you can put a card from your deck in your graveyard, or a cubic card. So in this deck, a card. So like we've seen so far with the monsters, you need to have Vijim in your graveyard to be able to get stuff going, because everything revolves on special summoning him from the graveyard. So Duza can help with that, because Duza can put him in the graveyard when he's summoned. He can also put some of the spells and traps in the graveyard, because many of the spells and traps in this deck have a secondary effect that activates by banishing them from the graveyard. So a lot of the spells and traps in this deck can be played twice. So 1600 attack, 1600 defense. When he's summoned, it acts like Foolish Burial. And then during another player's turn, when a monster is sent to your graveyard, so again, could be by his own effect when he's summoned, he can gain attack points, 200 attack points equal to the number of monsters with different names in your graveyard. So basically, if you open up with him, you could summon him, toss the monster, he gets 1800 attack. If it's at another time, again, if you've watched our duels, you saw me do this, and I try to explain this effect as well then, that, he gains 200 attack points for each monster of a different name in your graveyard, but that effect only triggers when a monster is sent to your graveyard while he's face up on the field, and the attack boost lasts for the turn. So it's not like it's a permanent attack boost. It only happens once per turn if, you can trigger his effect. But being able to be normal summoned still gives you a boost to start summoning cubics. Again, they have to be special summoned by sending cubics already on the field to the graveyard. And that wraps it up for all the monsters. So I'm going to go on to the spells, of which there's 2, and then the traps, of which there's 3, and then the 1 fusion. So first up is Cubic Karma. The spell card wisely put at 2, because Cubic Karma is actually pretty powerful in this deck. And again, more so in our anime character deck meta, because in most real decks that are full of spell and trap removal, this card is, so-so. But our decks, based off the anime, lack spell and trap removal. So, Cubic Karma starts off, when this card is activated, you can target one cubic monster you control, except a Vijim the Cubic Seed, and send any number of Vijim the Cubic Seeds from your hand and or deck to the graveyard. So, this is also the main way to start shoveling out those Vijims. is if you open up this card, bam, you can get all 3 in your graveyard. And you can boost a cubic monster on your field by 800 points for each one sent. So again, earlier I said how, the cubics have 0 attack if they're not cubic summoned. This card gets around that. This card would help you if you get it early enough on that you can special summon a cubic, it'll have 0 attack, and I can show you how that can happen. And then you can boost up to as much as 2,500 attack points. Next, if this card is face up on the field, and if I jam the cubic seed, is special summoned during your opponent's turn. So that's the catch. It has to be on your opponent's turn. You can automatically cut your opponent's life points in half by sending cubic karma to the graveyard. But again, the main way to do that really would have to destroy either Indiora or Buster Gundeal. Those are the two that special summon cubics when they're destroyed. The other ones do it during your turn if they're involved in the battle. Or if they've destroyed a monster battle. And then you can banish this card from your graveyard, add 1 cubic monster from your deck to your hand. So that's the last effect. That's once it's already done, its first effect, maybe the second effect. It's in the grave, banish it, add any cubic monster to your hand. So cubic karma has a lot that it does. It gets you 5 jams in the graveyard. It can potentially have your opponent's life points, if not, like you've seen with me and Delta. It's a good way to kind of keep your opponent in check because they won't destroy something you have because they know what they're going to do themselves by letting you special summon back 5 gem. And then if it's in graveyard, like sometimes I'll even toss these if I can. It's just a generic search card. So the last spell is Cubic Wave. And like so many of the other cubic cards, it just is ruthless. So its first effect, so it's on the field effect, is that you target a cubic monster you control and target an opponent's monster. Basically, it cuts your opponent's monster's attack in half. It doubles your cubic monster's attack, and this attack boost does not expire at the end of the turn. This attack boost does not, cost you your monster. Its second effect, so it's I'll call it graveyard effect, is that you can banish it from your graveyard with any number of cubic monsters in your graveyard, and then put cubic counters on an equal number of opponent's monsters as monsters you send. So you have to send at least 1 cubic monster with this card. Banish them both, and then dish out cubic counters. And again, as I said before, it's more the spells and traps that do the cubic counters, but they're very, very powerful because they negate your opponent's monster's effect and the monster cannot attack. So all it's good for is either a wall with its attack or defense points, or a tribute for them. Or, Synchro, Exceed, Fusion, whatever. But can't attack. Cubic Mandala. So continuous trap card that basically you can only activate it when opponent's monster is destroyed the same turn you activate it, because it lets you bring back the monsters that were destroyed this turn to your opponent's side of the field, and they have cubic counters on them. If you destroy your opponent's, let's say Blue Eyes, you can return it with Cubic Mandala. It has a cubic counter, so it cannot attack. It has no effect. It's not that Blue Eyes had an effect anyway. But what makes Cubic Mandala interesting is that as long as that monster, or as many monsters as there were that you chose, remain on the opponent's field, your opponent cannot activate any other monster effects. So, true, you're putting monsters back on their field that they could use for tributes, but the monsters can't attack, and they'll shut down any other effects your opponent wants to play. So, again, the deck kind of works to limit your opponent's monsters via cubic counters, such as Cubic Mandala. That's what it really does, just does, is kind of sets up a trap in your opponent's field that they cannot activate monster effects until they remove those monsters from the field. And this trap is one of my favorites. Cubic Rebirth. Again, almost, of course, every card in this deck, with the exception of Karma and Duza, are in 3 copies. So Cubic Rebirth. So when your opponent declares a direct attack, which is very plausible, right? Especially if you just open up with nothing. Target the attacking monster. Okay, so the card targets. kind of can be a problem sometimes. But so target the attacking monster. Your opponent is then forced to special summon all remaining copies from their hand, deck, or graveyard. The attacking monster and the ones that were just summoned are given cubic counters. Additionally, they all are given 0 attack. So this card actually does the absolute most reduction of anything. No effect, can't attack, and 0 attack. So you can basically take this card and your opponent has a bunch of monsters with 0 attack now, which you can then play off of on your following turn. But just to help you out, Cubic Rebirth's last effect says that if any cubic counter is replaced via its effect, so like, yeah, it's going to happen, you can special summon a level 4 or lower cubic from your hand, ignoring summoning conditions. So this is the one card I've kind of alluded to here and there, where, like, the first cubic family, which can be summoned from the hand and do 800 damage. So even if you don't summon them properly because you use Cubic Rebirth, they'll still inflict 800 damage, but they won't have any attack points. But then again, Cubic Karma can come in and give one of them those attack points. So this is kind of the card that supersedes any Cubic's effect, including something like Buster Gundeal or Indiora, and just summons them right up on the field. So it'll shut down your opponent for, a turn, or shut down a whole monster group if they have it. And then it helps you start setting up cubics. So the last card is Unification of the Cubic Lord. And its first effect is that it's what makes Diffusion. It just special summons a cubic fusion, using monsters on the field or, hand as material. So basically it's just polymerization for cubics. The second effect is that here's a graveyard effect. So when it's in your graveyard, you can banish it when a cubic monster is destroyed, and special summon a level 4 lower one from your hand or deck, ignoring summoning conditions. So there it is again. Because the cubics are so, finicky about being summoned, these two trap cards, this one and the last one, will let you summon a cubic monster from your hand or deck, ignoring whatever conditions that they have, so that you can get something on the field to protect yourself. But Cubic Lord's effect, the last bit, also says that that monster cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects for the rest of the turn. So it actually even helps you even more. So that's the entirety of the main deck. The Cubics, monster spells, traps that all have an interesting way of working, and and it's an interesting archetype. I think it's a fun archetype. It's not, wildly successful in real competitive. It would kind of really take a beating because, a lot of it relies. If you can start banishing cubic pieces, the whole thing kind of falls apart. But in our character deck meta, it's great. The last card is Diffusion. Crimson Nova Trinity that are Cubic Lord. So it's obviously a fusion of Crimson Nova because they have the same name. They just add the word Trinity in there. It makes 3 of them. But this fusion is kind of a monster. So its attack is 4,500. So it parallels Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. And aside from basic fusion stuff, like it has to have those 3 specific materials. Okay, yeah, in this deck, you're not going to have anything else. There's no substitutes in this deck. It cannot be targeted and is not destroyed by opponent's card effects. So it can still be destroyed by battle. But 4,500 attack makes it, really hard to get around. When it declares an attack, halve your opponent's life points. So just right then and there, if you attack, you cut your opponent's life points in half. If it destroys the monster by battle, it can make a second attack, and then halve your opponent's life points. So this card has really high attack power, and then without even destroying a monster, it can do, direct damage. And then the last effect, speaking of direct damage, is so if you take effect damage while he's on the field, inflict the same amount to your opponent. It doesn't matter how it got there. So it could even be, the effect of a Crimson Nova if you got one back after you fusion summoned him. Crimson Nova does 3,000 damage to both players. His effect triggers. So now he does 3,000 damage to your opponent. So at this point, your opponent has now taken 6,000 damage to your 3,000 damage. Same thing with Ring of Destruction, or something even like Magic Cylinder, too. Any card that would inflict damage to you if he's on the field, your opponent takes equal damage. But if it's a card where you both took that damage, your opponent will take double it. So this card has no shortage of ways of doing damage to your opponent, and the deck as a whole, while remaining a little bit of a flawed archetype, because the difficulty is to, sometimes you get the ball rolling. They're a lot of fun. I really enjoy playing the cubic monsters. They're just a lot of fun. They're really cool too, even though they're I've seen with cubic. None of them really have anything to do with cubes or squares. Not that they had to, but if you heard the word cubic, I'm thinking they're kind of like box monsters. Like, yeah, I know. They got like claws and razors and eyeballs and stuff. So thanks guys for watching this video. All of our decks from the Dark Side Dimensions movie pack. Stay tuned for more stuff, some more special releases coming out soon. Another announcement coming out soon, just something we want to throw your way, see if you guys are interested in. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and Why'd Your Anime Games out.